It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Tennessee Titans Stadium Experience Senior Coordinator, Keith Bremer. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to work in professional sports?
Sure. So like a lot of people coming up in this industry had a big affiliation with sports growing up, whether it's following along, watching Sports Center every morning, to playing sports myself, and then just figuring out what the next steps were when it came to even at the high school level, picking a college major. So it automatically became something that I gravitated towards just because of my love for the whole business and everything around the industry. So went to Syracuse for sport management and really was trying to figure out what exactly that meant, and was fortunate to be in an awesome program with a lot of great professors and colleagues who helped guide me and figure out my path forward. But just something I always really enjoyed and was fortunate enough to carve out a career path within it.
How was it like, obviously, studying at Syracuse sports management?
It was I don't know what I necessarily expected, but it was a great experience from the jump. I had a lot of classes right away that opened my eyes to some of the different paths within the industry, whether it's sales, marketing, so forth. And getting to learn from the best of the best. It's the school is named after David B. Falk, who was Michael Jordan's agent and from Fame Sports Management. And then in the Newhouse School for my minor, which is a great communication school that has produced a lot of great announcing and broadcasting talent throughout the sports industry. So getting to experience all that an hour from home where I grew up at a school that I grew up watching and following was a really special experience for me, and just all in all pretty eye-opening for the different career paths that we could see, whether it's in class or from alumni or people that came in to speak to us. So nothing but good things to say about the Cuse.
Of course, how did you know that you wanted to work in professional sports and get started with, obviously, the FC Dallas?
Sure. So every Syracuse student that goes through the sport management program, their senior year is a capstone, it's called. So essentially a full-time internship with a sports organization. And going through the different paths within the industry, one thing that resonated with me is that I wanted to be somewhere in the sports industry where I felt like I could make a positive impact. And that guided a lot of my decisions and pursuits from that point forward. So for that capstone position, I interviewed with a lot of different places and ended up in Frisco, Texas with FC Dallas, which was super interesting. I had never been to Texas. I never followed soccer too closely. So it was all new to me. Even with it being a one semester type deal, I flew down with 2 suitcases and that's it. Just took a one-way flight, moved into the apartment with the bare minimum stuff, and had an awesome experience. FC Dallas, they're owned by the Hunt family, who owns the Kansas City Chiefs as well. Lamar Hunt, iconic sports figure, started the organization. And so getting to learn myself from an organization like that, where you could see so many things firsthand, a first-class organization, and just the resources that I got to work with, which was being in their foundation and getting to see operations from the Frisco Bowl, which had just kicked off, and the National Soccer Hall of Fame, which at the time was being built and is now home to FC Dallas in their South Plaza area, I believe. and even at a facility with 17 full-size soccer fields, like all of that, to experience that as a senior in college was super exciting. And fortunately enough for me as well, the NFL draft was happening in Dallas that year. So I got some leadership experience there too, and spent a lot of time busy and working in Dallas, but it was a great experience and helped me get a lot on my resume and a lot under my belt.
Of course, being obviously in college and still getting started, what was that like, obviously picking up everything and going straight to Dallas?
A big change of scenery for sure. I grew up not too far from Syracuse's campus, as I mentioned, and had a lot of friends that I grew accustomed to and lived with and everything. So just from the personal aspect, it was a big jump for me to go somewhere where I didn't necessarily know anybody, but worked with a great group of people. My supervisor at the time, Brooke, she's still there and doing great things with their foundation, and met a lot of great people that made it feel like home, even home away from home in some sense. So it was exciting, challenging all at once, but a great experience, no doubt.
What was that like, obviously in 2018, being a part of the NFL team's draft?
Yeah, I had seen that the NFL draft was being hosted at AT&T Stadium, home of the Cowboys, and being a lifelong football fan, and of course wanting to break into the industry with a new position after my internship, I gravitated towards it right away. So I reached out to the Dallas Sports Commission, who was the host for the draft itself, putting it on, and they saw my resume and asked if I would be interested in being in a leadership role, managing a group of staff members for that event, about 20 to 25 people each day. And I jumped at the opportunity, and it was a really cool one, something that I still look back on with a lot of great memories. Getting to be in an event that's hosting 100,000 people just the first night, and I think over 200,000 throughout the 3 days, was amazing. I believe it was the most attended, highest attendance of any NFL draft at the time. I think Nashville beat it by a little bit, but super, super cool. And one other awesome element for me was that when I was working the draft, I had accepted my next opportunity with the Bills at that point. And so getting to be in the draft room when they made their pick, which was Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds as well, that was an awesome moment to see it come full circle in terms of my internship experience, my next opportunity, and being there at a big spectacle of an event was pretty darn cool from my perspective.
Of course, as you talked about that, what was that feeling like, obviously being a part of the NFL draft and with taking the Buffalo Bills job, seeing obviously the quarterback that got picked before anybody else knew?
It was a rush, no doubt. I grew up a Bills fan as well. I should mention that. I'm from the Rochester, New York area. So always grew up watching the team and was so ecstatic when that opportunity came about to work there. And so there was a lot of time in the middle, which felt like a long time because I was just so excited to get going. But you see Commissioner Goodell walk across the stage, and it felt like slow motion because if you, I don't know how closely you follow the draft, but there's another top QB prospect that year, Josh Rosen. And so it was like, it felt like Commissioner Goodell paused time when he said the Buffalo Bills select Josh. And then it was like, oh, which one's it going to be? And turned out to be Josh Allen. It was really, really cool to see. But some of those moments working in sports are unmatched. It's pretty incredible. And I never thought that this industry would take me some of the places it did. And that was one of the highlights that I've ever been a part of.
Of course, as you said, growing up being a Buffalo Bills fan, what was that like, obviously getting the job with the Buffalo Bills, knowing obviously the culture and obviously the fandom?
That's actually one of the things that I mentioned throughout my interview process with the Bills was I felt really lucky to be someone who has experienced that impact of the organization from the outside as a fan. And so the opportunity to make an impact from the inside of the organization and leave my mark, as best I could was something really appealing to me. So something you get used to a little bit being around coaches and players and whatnot just from working in the industry. But every so often there was a moment where I had to be like, wow, that's so cool that it's so and so, and seeing some guys that you grew up watching was pretty awesome. But in terms of the work experience, that was great to get into work on the events and experience team there on the guest experience side, which is pretty relatable to what I do now with the Titans, but also on the event side too, working with community events, and corporate partnership events, and internal events, things of that sort, to just be a part of it and to be all in the same building as everyone in the organization was pretty special to walk into each morning.
How is that like, obviously coming to Nashville, Tennessee to get to work with the Tennessee Titans?
Much like Dallas, that one was another big jump for me. So when my Bills experience ended, it was a graduate assistant role that was about 10 months or so. They covered a full season in the off season. So once that concluded, I was looking for a next step and loved to stay in the NFL because of how much I enjoyed it with the Bills, and of course having that sports background, and was fortunate to have the opportunity to come up here in Tennessee, working as a fan services assistant and never visiting Nashville. Nashville was still big then, but not quite as big as it is now. It feels like it's growing every time I turn around. But I didn't know a whole lot about it, honestly. I knew country music, and then you first see Broadway downtown, and it's a little bit of a shock. Wow, this is what I'm walking into here. But it's been great, and from day one, the Titans organization has made me feel at home, and has been a great place to work.
What are some of your roles, obviously, as a fan service assistant?
That was the first position that I had here with the Titans. So relying a lot on that guest experience background from my time in Buffalo, working with a large group of game day staff from our fan services team. So myself and the rest of our department really oversaw that that sort of thing with the Titans here in terms of our guest experience and training, onboarding, hiring staff members to execute our mission and be extensions of us. So that was a big part of it, to not only staff those major events, work some of the outside events that we had too, whether it was Nashville Soccer Club, who now has their own stadium, or the Music City Bowl. But the biggest difference, I would say, between that original position and what I do now is that at the time that our department was technically under our ticket office. And so in addition to those guest experience roles, we also helped a lot, my department that is, with season ticket member events and season ticket services, even to the point where when COVID first hit us, we were obviously communicating with our staff to let them know about all the changes and updates and keep them in the know, but was asked to help out with season ticket services as well, which is something that I had never done before. So being the point of contact for a lot of season ticket member accounts and giving them information and updates as they came in, that was really interesting and certainly a challenge, but it felt great that they trusted me with that responsibility and learned a lot from it. So those were the main responsibilities under that fan services assistant umbrella I had.
Of course, how did it feel to get promoted to become the stadium experience coordinator?
That was a pretty special moment for me in my career. The stadium experience department didn't really exist before then. It was a brand new department. And so they were hiring for the stadium experience coordinator role to be almost a different version, expanded version of our fan services team and all the different initiatives that we wanted to introduce to the stadium. And so myself and my coworker Austin, who I'm real close with and have worked with since I started here with the Titans, we were both going for it, and one position turned into them hiring us both, which was super, super exciting that not only I get to step into this new role with new opportunities, but to do it alongside the person that I had been working with and had a good rapport with was great. And so that whole feeling and that whole process was really special to me, to see all the culmination of a lot of hard work and a lot of time put in to have the trust within the organization to see myself and Austin and now Sam, who's part of our team, to be the people to really build out and lead this department has been a great thing.
Of course, what are some of your roles and responsibilities, along with what does a typical day look like?
Yeah, roles and responsibilities. So our goal is to make any guest experience the best they can possibly be from the time they arrive to our venue to the time they leave. So that could be anything from web information that we're putting out in terms of the different features of our stadium and what we offer and how our processes work, to the staffing element, which is a huge part of it, training and onboarding and managing staff members to help us execute the mission that I mentioned, and working with our stadium amenities too. So things we offer like first game certificates, accessibility. We have a great partnership with an organization called Culture City, who has made our venue sensory inclusive. So we not only offer sensory bags to our guests, but have a physical sensory room as well. So overseeing all those different amenities that we have, working with some awesome staff members throughout our team, and then really just gathering feedback from staff, from guests, to make the experience the best it can possibly be.
Of course, being in the stadium experience, how closely do you work with the fan experience team?
It's pretty much hand in hand. I know every organization structures it a little bit differently, but one thing that is interesting about our venue is that we really try to be as dynamic as possible. We had CMA Fest, which was a 4-day country music festival in June, leading into Monster Jam, which was monster trucks, to a Def Leppard concert. We have WWE SummerSlam coming up later this month, and then go into Music City Grand Prix racing, and then into Titan season. And so that wide range of events is pretty special, especially from a stadium perspective. A lot of times you'll see that flexibility maybe in arenas, but not so much in stadiums. So to do all that on Nashville's biggest stage is pretty cool. And the fan experience, we really try to keep as close to Titans games as possible, to offer the different things that we offer throughout Titans games, to make guests feel welcome, and to gather and act upon any feedback in real time as it pops up.
Of course, as you've talked about it, what is it like, obviously, not just obviously working with the Tennessee Titans and making sure the stadium experience is good, but also working with organizations such as WWE with SummerSlam coming?
Every event is a little bit different for us, but we have gotten some good practice from all the different events that we've hosted in the past. So we've seen a little bit of everything, but it's interesting. No matter how an event's structured, we try to communicate as best we can whatever changes are happening, but also recognizing that certain events have different crowds. Titans, we have a lot of awesome season ticket members, some of whom have been PSL founders, meaning that they were here from the jump when the team moved to Nashville. So that crowd of people might know information about our stadium a lot better than those who, let's say, are traveling in for the weekend, who flew in for CMA Fest. So figuring out how we communicate all those different policies and procedures effectively to different groups is usually a challenge, but something that we've gotten a pretty good hang of. But that's a great thing about, from my perspective, is getting all that different experience and having no 2 days be alike, truly, from the different events we have, is a great thing to see. And we want to continue to be really dynamic at Nissan Stadium.
Of course, being in the stadium experience, how closely do you play with obviously what the fans say about the stadium to either change or make better?
That's a great question, some of which is tough to control, certain things about when the stadium was built and so forth. But we've seen a lot of changes even the past few years. And this is nothing that I was involved in or can take credit in, but just a good example. We had a lot of feedback from our guests that they wanted to see more local food options. So we partnered with organizations like Martin's Barbecue and Party Fowl for hot chicken, and Slim and Husky's Pizza to bring sort of a Nashville flavor to our stadium as a direct result of guest feedback that we got. So a lot of those things that we're able to add and to incorporate sometimes is just as simple as trying something. We have our first game certificates that we've really pushed, and to see guests come up for the first time at our stadium and have a smile on their face because they can see that they get a commemorative token for free of their visit here, and the joy that brought, we've really pushed that and expanded it. So anything within our power to change that we get a guest feedback on, especially for the better, we always try to do that. But even if it's something we can't immediately change, it's always something that we keep in mind for the future when those opportunities do become available.
Of course, what are some of the things that you've learned so far with working in professional sports?
There's a whole lot. I know from my time, even going back to Syracuse, having some great professors and people who have done it before me to lay the foundation was super helpful. But I think one thing is that there's a lot you do in sports that very few people might notice. And whether it's staying a little late to go the extra mile to prep something for an event coming up, or answering an urgent email at 11 o'clock at night from one of your staff members who has an important question or issue that they're dealing with, those things don't necessarily show up to the public even, but when you can see the impact that it has on either the operation of the event or the person that you're working with. So even the things that you think go unseen really make a huge difference. And that's one of the things that I've always tried to remember throughout my time within working in sports.
Of course, what advice would you have people that are looking to get started and working in professional sports on the stadium experience side?
One thing that I didn't mention yet is, even at Syracuse before I had that experience with FC Dallas, is I try to get involved in as many events as I could. So even as a volunteer with the AHL All-Star Game, which was held in Syracuse, and the World Indoor Lacrosse Championship, just getting a wide range of events under my belt. And you probably hear it a lot through your interviews and people listening who follow this sort of thing, is that working in sports, you see a lot of things that you pick up on that maybe the general public doesn't. And so I think the more events you can experience, especially a variety, you can start to pick up on some of those things a little easier and say, oh man, what if we did this for next time? Or let's just adjust this and see how it works out. So even if it may seem small and something that might not be directly related to your dream job or end goal, it definitely helps. And as you start to build that experience, you find it to be easier and easier to do certain tasks and open yourself up to certain opportunities.
What advice would you have people that are looking to work either in the stadium experience side or even the fans experience side on a sports professional team?
I think the events experience is big. That always helps. Flexibility is such an important thing. We have the sort of inside joke, like other duties as assigned on the job posting. You never know what you're going to be walking into. Sometimes we're running around at concerts helping put wristbands on people to get down on the floor, and sometimes we're running around at a Titans game to help make a fan's experience better. Sometimes we're putting on really cool events that you have to take a step back and appreciate. So you never really outgrow the simplest tasks. You're never too good for anything, and that's a really important piece of it. And then just showing people you care. You genuinely care about how their experience goes as a guest or a staff member, or the different offerings that we have as a venue. That's something that you can't really fake is the caring part. And I think that goes a long way, especially on the fan experience side.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me on there. I'm on Twitter as well at Keith Bremer 1. And those are probably the main ones that I use for professional, but I'm on all the major social media platforms.
Thank you again, Keith Bremer, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Tennessee Titans as a Stadium Experience Senior Coordinator.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Keith Bremer, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.